sports to movies. The video game business rakes in more than $20 billion a year, making bigger bucks than even Hollywood.
This industry was created on products that were so exciting that people would stay up all night outside a store to get it the next morning.
But how did two lines and a dot turn into the high-tech, hyper-realistic worlds of games like The Sims and Halo? It's not just about circuit boards and chips. It's about people driven by vision and obsession.
Video games to me is my whole life. That's all I've done since I was 12.
It's about games that have been blamed for making kids antisocial and violent.
If you play too much Doom, you're going to end up going on a shooting spree. There's really people who believe this.
It's about feuds, wars, and even a little bit of good old-fashioned piracy.
If they were going to copy our stuff, we were going to bury them, one way or another.
But most of all, it's about how a whole generation grabbed the joystick and got juiced up on video gaming. The secrets behind the games, the passion that powered the industry, and the guys who made it happen.
Video games. For some people, they're a blast from the past. Something they used to do at the local arcade when they were hanging out after high school. But for others, video games are the new technological frontier, an innovative form of communication and storytelling, and the future of entertainment. Hi, I'm Tony Hawk. A lot of you are probably used to seeing me with a skateboard and looking a little something like this. And a lot of you gamers are even more used to seeing me like this. I got into video games early on, even before I got to be a video game character myself. In fact, I don't think I even had my first board yet, and where could you find me? Playing Pac-Man down at the pizza parlor. But games have come a long way since then. And if you think the history of the video game invasion is all about cool graphics and cutting-edge technology, well, you're right. But it's also a story about a group of unique individuals who started with nothing but ideas. Guys who came out of their garages and ended up as power players in a multi-billion-dollar industry, who revolutionized entertainment and turned themselves into rock stars. And the first rock star of them all was this guy. This is Willie Higginbotham. He helped invent the nuclear bomb and the first computer game. The bomb looked like this. The game looked like this. A primitive version of tennis, it was just a dot moving back and forth on an oscilloscope screen. It showed up as a novelty exhibit at Brookhaven National Lab in 1958 and generated about as much excitement as this picture. Mortal Kombat it was not. Fast forward, 1961. Student and pioneering hacker Steve Russell, nickname Slug. He spent 6 months tapping into a $120,000 computer at MIT. End result, a punch card-driven video game called Space War.
He was the one who conceived the idea of making a game that would be completely interactive. It was a game where there were 2 rockets, a game where Flash Gordon-style rockets that would fly around shooting each other with a sun in the middle that had some gravity. If it sucked you in, you got destroyed.
Space War spread to universities around America on an early version of the internet. But would the average Joe spend $120,000 to own one? Slug figured, no way, and never patented the idea. He left MIT without graduating. Jump to 1966. A little device called television had made it into almost every living room in America. It was a cultural phenomenon, but to Ralph Baer, Vice President of Engineering at electronics giant Sanders Associates, it was a business opportunity.
The concept was this: 40 million TV sets out there in the U.S. alone. If I could hit 1% of that, that's 400,000, and attach some gadget to 400,000 sets, I got a business.
Baer needed his play device to fit on a shelf. So that didn't give his little brown box much room for processing power. He wasn't doing much better than old Higgy, just 2 dots moving on a screen. No way this was going to set the world on fire. Then it hit him. A blockbuster breakthrough that would blow the roof off of home entertainment forever. 3 spots.
The third spot became a ball. that made it into a ping pong game or into a tennis game. Once we had that third ball going back and forth, we knew we had something.
By 1971, Bear's bosses had patented the brown box and licensed it to television manufacturer Magnavox. Now called Odyssey, it began showing up at various trade fairs around the country.
The Odyssey was the hit of the show, and I had a hard time not getting up in my seat and jumping up and down and saying, that's my baby.
The system is called Odyssey, and the hardware consists of a master control and 2 player control units connected by cable to any set 18 inches or larger, black and white or color. The players will simply switch to an unused channel, select their game, insert the program card in the control box, and place the overlay on the TV screen.
So for instance, if you were playing a tennis game, this would actually, using from static electricity, would cling to the front of your television. So this would be the overlay for a hockey game.
The Odyssey hit store shelves in May 1972 and sold for $100. And hey, if you wanted to pop for another $29, you could also buy yourself this wicked weapon and play the first ever shooter video game. Seems that even then, guns and video games were destined to be together. And to convince America how hip it was to own an Odyssey, Magnavox got the king of cool, old blue eyes, Frank Sinatra himself to pitch the product.
Unfortunately, in the beginning, they connected it to a Magnavox television set, of course. That got the idea abroad that you needed a Magnavox television set to play games. And they had to undo that by convincing customers in the store that, no, you could indeed plug it into any TV set.
It took over a year, but Magnavox managed to hook up about 150,000 Americans and their televisions to an Odyssey system. Next player in the game, Nolan Bushnell, an employee of a Northern California electronics firm. He'd played Slug Russell's Space War at engineering school and couldn't get it out of his brain.
They actually thought, hey, this would be great in the amusement park, but how do you put a $1 million computer into and pay for it at 25 cents a throw? Remember, the microprocessor hadn't been invented yet. And then one day, the mini computer for $5,000 came across my desk, an ad for it. I had the epiphany of being able to reduce it to a single board that was actually a fancy signal generator, if you would.
In 1971, Nolan's first video game, Computer Space, hit American pinball arcades. Sleek, sexy, and we all remember the first time we played it, right? Right. It was one of the biggest turkeys of all time.
The problem with the game was that I loved it, all my friends loved it, but all my friends were engineers. It was a little bit too complex for the guy with a beer in a bar.
Nolan's next move, taking $500 and starting his own company in Santa Clara, California with buddy Ted Dabney. The year was 1972. The company was called Atari.
Atari comes from the Japanese game of Go, which is a polite warning saying, watch out, you're going to get whacked.
First big hire, engineer Al Alcorn. Nolan, proving he already had what it takes to be a great corporate executive, landed Al by lying to him.
He told me he had a contract with General Electric to build a consumer video game, a home video game, which was like almost impossible to do in those days. And the fact that nobody from General Electric ever came by or called or wrote us a letter didn't occur to me. I was too busy building the prototype.
We decided to give him a test game. I'll call it a throwaway game, but something that was simple. Basically, ping pong, 2 paddles on either side, ball moving between them.
Man, does this sound familiar. But remember, it was still early in 1972, and the Odyssey hadn't hit stores' shelves yet. The concept was still fair game, and Al had his own spin on the idea.
One of the things I discovered is that if the ball didn't speed up, it wasn't fun to play. So I added the ball speed up to the game. And the other thing that we did at the very end was the sound. And since I was already way over budget, I poked around and found tones that were already existent in the machine. And that became the sound.
We said, okay, let's call it Pong. And we put it in Handicaps Tavern in Sunnyvale, California.
This baby here is the original Pong prototype that went to Andy Capp's Tavern in Sunnyvale, and it has the original wire wrap that I built in 3 months in 1972. We put it in the box, put it up on the barrel.
It was an immediate hit. We weren't aware of just how much of a hit it was until we got a service call and found that the coin box had totally filled up and wouldn't take any more quarters. Those are the kind of technical problems that we can solve.
Here we have one of the first quarters that the Pong machine ever made, which now represents a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's in a little piece of plastic.
Atari started rolling out their machines in November of 1972, and America went Pong crazy.
There were several reasons that Pong was very successful. The first one was it was extremely easy to play, but very, very difficult to master. They had to pay a lot of money to get really good. The second one is that women found that they were better players than men. It turns out that women have better small motor coordination than men do. And it became socially acceptable for women to ask men to come over and play Pong.
More players meant more machines, and Atari needed more manpower to build them, fast.
We tried a few social experiments with running buses into undesirable parts of the town and giving people a chance to come and have a job. It was kind of a rude awakening from some of our Age of Aquarius belief structures.
They hired whoever they could hire in the beginning, which meant they got a lot of bikers. You talk to some of the straight-laced people, and they talk about being scared to walk the floor. They talk about going into bathrooms and seeing used needles and stuff on the ground.
The converse is, the 20% that stayed with us really appreciated the opportunity, became some of our most valuable employees.
But who wouldn't want to work at a company where the bonuses came in beer kegs and strategy meetings were held in hot tubs?
Since we had a lot of young people, we would constantly offer to throw a party if they hit quota. And it turns out when you've got 18, 19, 20-year-olds, they're much more interested in the party than an extra, 50 cents an hour. So we got known as a party company.
There's a story that if you walked by the Borrega Street building and you breathed deeply by the air vents, you'd get stoned because the pot smoking inside of it was so heavy.
It was a very laid-back culture, which is very important in a creative environment. I mean, you can't really punch the clock and come up with something creative.
It didn't seem to matter what was going on inside Atari, because on the outside, they'd become the kings of the 60-year-old arcade business. And in America, how do you know when you've really made it to the top? When people start suing you. It wasn't long before Atari got hit with their first lawsuit. And it came from Magnavox, who claimed that Pong violated Ralph Baer's Odyssey patent.
I looked at the patent and I said, my God, this guy's patented the idea of any kind of a moving object on a video screen controlled by anything, and it was filed in 1969.
The Magnavox was based on analog technology, which makes it fuzzy, didn't have sound, didn't have score. I mean, you didn't really feel like you were beating somebody when you beat them, which is one of the core essence of what a game is.
But hey, what about those Magnavox trade show demos?
Nolan Bushnell played a game in Burlingame, California, on May the 24th, I think, 1972. He signed the guest book, played the ping pong game.
Bushnell decided to accept Magnavox's offer of a settlement. Atari paid Magnavox just under $1 million and in exchange became their first licensee. Game over and everyone's a winner. And who says lawsuits don't work?
Believe it or not, it was never a very big issue for us. We settled it for less than it had cost us to defend it.
Then Atari went on the attack against the clones, knockoffs, and pirate versions of Pong that were popping up all over the world.
We actually became quite diabolical about seeing ways that we could just mess them up. We put a chip in and we purposefully mismarked it so that when somebody copied us, they'd put the wrong chip in We felt like we were in a war.
It was a war that would change entertainment forever. And as the Atari troops attacked the arcades, Bushnell got ready to open a second front in living rooms across America.